Brothers and sisters in the ministry, thank you for coming for this event. My name is Arif Huskic, President and founder of Commonwealth Alliance Crucis Interfaith Organization, and I welcome you all for our annual event, Interfaith Seminar on Marriage and Family Customs. So from honorable clergies, members of Commonwealth Alliance, presenters, you will hear tonight on marriage and family customs, which means marriage on religious and traditional way of life. I would like to introduce you with our presenters. We have a few more on the way. From my left side, Reverend Darla Swin, Sister Nancy, Mary Gemraz from Adana University in Livonia, Rabbi Dorit Edot, Reverend Radni Gasevi, same time Vice President of Commonwealth Alliance, Pastor Dr. Yvette Griffin, wife of late Bishop C.D. Griffin, who was first Vice President. Next to her is David Henderson from Baha'i Faith. He's our secretary. And just at this moment, we have our Honorable Kara Majewski, Mayor of City of Hamtramck. Please give yourself applause around and for herself, please. I would like to introduce you with a moderator of this program, Pastor Dr. Yvette Griffin. She will continue the program. Thank you.
Oh, let's give me a hand. I want to say good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
It's a wonderful opportunity to be your moderator on tonight on marriage and family customs that are just near and dear to my heart. And so at this time, we were going to ask Sister Nancy to come with prayer, and then I'll be back.
Let us remember that God is in our midst. We praise and we thank you, O loving God, creator of all that is good, for the people gathered here tonight and the people whose lives we touch by our ministry. We have many blessings, and sometimes we take them for granted. But we know that you are always there, offering us the help that we need to spread your love and bring peace and unity among people. Help us to do what you call us to do so that they open their hearts, their minds, and their hands to make this world a better place for all people, where we build bridges of understanding, where we look for those who are in need, and reach out to them to help them to have lives, that you will be number one in them and help them to be able to see that whatever happens in their lives, you are there. We make our prayer in your name, and we praise and thank you always. Amen.
Amen.
Hello again. I would like to invite Mayor Majewski to the podium to say welcome remarks. Welcome, and give her a present.
Thank you, Gregory. It's really nice to see so many familiar faces and some new ones here to talk about what's really a kind of a vital topic in our community and in our homes, especially now when there's so much division. I mean, what this topic really is about how we come together. And I think the variety of ways, if you can just indulge me for a few minutes, the variety of ways that we can come together in marriage and as families, I think is kind of the abiding and the uniting idea that we need to carry with us out in the world that seeks to divide us in so many ways. As a historian and as a humanist, I have a pretty fluid concept of marriage and family. Maybe some of you know that my husband and I lived together for 25 years before we got married. We threw a wedding for our 50th birthdays. And I'll tell you that the difference between living together and being married, we feel that difference. And we're glad every day that we took that step. But I also have a lot of sympathy and understanding for folks who find alternative ways to commit to each other and to be married, whether we give that legal recognition or not. I think that bond between people, gay, straight, children, no children, that's not the essence of it. The essence of it is how we connect with each other, and that commitment, that guarantee that we have each other's backs, right? No matter where we go in the world, no matter where our careers take us, no matter what challenges we face them together. And that's something that as married couples we do, despite all the forces, working against us sometimes. And as a community we do. So those are my simple words to you. And I thank you for being here and for having this discussion in Hamtramck, where the idea of community and the kind of varieties of ways that we create community and create family are so important. Thank you.
We want to thank our Honorable Mayor of Hamtramck for those wonderful words. And I want to give you just a few little tips. I will be the timer. 8 minutes, please. I'm good at that. And so also, before we start, we're going to start in the order that's on the flyer. And so those who are not here, so we're going to go right in order. Okay? And before we start, as the moderator, I just want a few minutes. I want to say, throughout the United States history, marriage has been tied to religion and religious institutions. And today, virtually all faith traditions have rules and ceremonies regarding marriage. And in the United States especially, as well as other countries, clergy of different religious groups are authorized by the government to perform weddings. In the United States, roughly half of all American adults, 48%, say they are married. According to the 2014 Religious Landscape Study, much smaller shares of the United States adults say that they're living with a partner, and that's about 7%. The divorced and separated are about 13%, and widowed, which I find myself in now, is 7%. So a quarter of Americans say they've never been married. So I just want to kick that off. And so at this time, we're going to ask our first presenter to come.
Thank you, Pastor Yvette. Thank you, Mayor, for the remarks. Thank you for everyone to come. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Brothers and sisters, as topic is marriage and family customs, I would say a bit from both sides, from religious and customs or traditional marriages. Particularly in country of Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I'm from, and from Islamic perspectives. Marriage is essential contract between male and female, for maintaining society, build up the family, take care of their community, and be part of humanity. As Imam and minister of our faiths, through past 20 years of my counseling and marriages and family development, I was very successful in that, as my clients are happy with working with me. I always say there is not a right marriage from any places of the world. You have particular places who you associate with and where you associate at. And that's how you get married. If you get married from any places that are already disturbed and disturbing community, believe me, your marriage will be disturbed as well. There is very hard to find way beside, first of all, taking pre-marriage class to introduce yourself to your new spouse, introduce each other, and be honest and totally open. Think about your future wife, just whatever you think about yourself, and that this girl, your future wife, thinking about husband, and she think about herself. This is not marriage only between male and female, two people. This is marriage, two families each other, because the lady have a parents, brothers, sisters, grandparents, aunties, uncles, all of them, in my respect, should be, if I want my marriage healthy, their entire family and relatives have to be as mine own equally. No difference between my own parents and her parents. My brothers and sisters, her brothers and sisters, and relatives. As well, she should accept same in our pre-marriage class. It's too late after first night, after first year, after in life so many years. We're witnessing even 50 years of marriage getting divorced today. Why? There is a reasons that I would say those reasons are in pre-marriage classes, because usually money-wise from one or another side comes. Money lackness, not have enough money for living because we don't think how we can live and what we can manage in our life. But in pre-marriage class, I will ask both sides for their income, their professions, and their incomes, annual incomes. I will ask them about marriage industry, what they think besides sexual activities. Do they understand that next year baby is coming? God willing, right? Sometimes twins. I wish 5 kids get every year one marriage because we don't have a population in the world no more. We have to think that way. We don't have employment enough. We don't have enough professionals because we have lack of children. The marriage is factory of human beings. The marriage is factory of humanity. Same as GM producing cars. But who will drive those cars if you don't have a kids growing? In time when first baby comes in pre-marriage class, I would advise both to keep love among themselves and extra love for baby, because one or another parent, they give extreme love on baby. When a husband the most need his wife with him, oh, I love my baby, and she going in midnight to kiss the baby, baby doesn't cry. So make him upset, and he's not happy all night, he's not happy tomorrow at work, he come unhappy back from work tomorrow and telling her, and she said, my baby, and they start yelling, that's how come divorce. That is one of the reasons I had as a counselor to talk with. In Quran, God explicitly said who is prohibited to marry. Human being cannot marry his own mother, nor father's wife, even if he is a stepchild to this lady, he cannot marry her. Even if father divorced her, he still cannot marry her, or the lady cannot accept that marriage. We cannot marry our sisters, nor sisters can marry brothers. We cannot marry aunties, nor aunties can marry us. We cannot marry aunties' children, nor aunties' children can marry our children. Unfortunately, now time people practicing marriages. I was invited to the marriage where 2 brothers married to their kids. One brother married his son with brother's daughter. That is fine for them, that's fine with me. Religiously, for them is okay. Mostly that goes in cultural way. This is chapter 4 and verse 22-24 that I said what is prohibited to marry. Everybody else, you can marry male and female. So there is many ways that should be discussed about children going in teenagers' life. We all was in teenagers' age, and sometimes we act now as we are. Teenagers don't have any better decision than what they have. We have, unfortunately, even from our schools, mamas become to be mama in her 13, 14 years of age, 15 most common. Brothers, sisters, we need to work as a parents with our children. We cannot blame the school. We have to have a relationship, parents, teachers, and educators. We have to make connection with us. We have to make connection with the city officials, government, with our mayor, with council members. We have to make official contacts with the police chief and police officers, regardless of which city we live in. Because our teenagers getting scared of police, and police getting scared of teenagers because of talking, as you see now in this public media, social media, you see on Facebook, the posts are going the way that affecting our marriages, but we as parents should read our children's comments on Facebook and other social media to see what they're talking about and who they associate with. It will be too late when she become mama or pregnant heavily that just father, almost she need to get, but mother secretly keep her away from father and so on, and then later on have to tell. So parents kick the girl out as pregnant woman. She is 14-year-old, she know have a life, she don't know any better life. Her kind of husband, proud in school among his friends, he is a father, becoming to be father, he don't have a penny in his pocket. What kind of father is that of 15, 16 years of age? Or some adults get so young girls and make them pregnant as well. So that is not human mentality in this society normal to do that to the girl. If you do that, that's okay. Already you made mistake, accept that girl as your wife, accept that child as your own child, and take care of it. Otherwise, she have to do any illegal jobs to feed the baby when baby comes. And he proud father, he have to do something. He cannot have an employment. He's kicked out also of his family. Police don't let you live in dumpster. You have to have your address. But no one will accept you if your family threw you out of the house. So unfortunately, we as a community leaders, activists, clergy, any human being, I'll ask you to watch on yourself and watch on your neighbors, watch on your neighbors' children as your own children, and advise them to not to put those youngsters in this kind of poor situation, because that costs all of us. Whatever of those cases happen in Hamtramck, in newspapers, crime log comes up, they said in Hamtramck this kind of activities, Highland Park, Detroit, or everywhere else. Unfortunately, recently Hamtramck, Detroit, and Highland Park are our community, and sometimes I'm shy to read this crime log where I live at. I'd like to ask all the parents to advise own children and others as own, so these newspapers, editors have nothing to do with crime logs. Our community is much better now as used to be 10, 15, and 20 years ago. Mayor Majewski is witness. She's been here almost 20 years, or 20. She know where she came when she know what she saw in Hamtramck when she came. I know that too when I saw. So I am a refugee from Bosnia-Herzegovina, and now refugees are overcoming. I'm 22 years in Hamtramck, a proud citizen of the United States, thank God, and trying to help myself and you and community as much as I can, and with anything I can. I ask you all to shake hands with your neighbors, whoever they are. They call us all immigrants, we are. But I'm proud that I'm employed in the company in Hamtramck, first employment 22 years ago, where black person taught me how to do the job. And the white person was the owner of the business. So I worked with both. They did not ask me of my religion, I did not ask them of theirs. We got along, and now I feel those are immigrants, regardless what country came from. I feel them like myself, and I accept them as my brothers and sisters, and I ask you all to do the same. We are immigrants, but we need to live as United citizens, to be under God's law and respect highly Constitution of the United States and our community laws wherever we are. Thank you so much, and this is my presentation. If you have any questions, please email me. My email is a banner of Ministry and Spirituality Centers of Humanity. Email me for any presenters questions you have. Email to my email. This is general email and phone number on the banner. Text us the questions, email us the questions, and I will share to every one of presenters who the question is addressed at. Thank you. God bless you.
Amen.
I'm sorry, I have to go. Actually, I have to prepare a wedding ceremony because the mayor can marry people, for a Bangladeshi girl and I don't know, a non-Bangladeshi guy.
Thank you, everybody. God bless you. Give you a hug. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good to see you.
We want to thank you for that, and we want to thank Ray for his presentation. Before I start, you know, he's the president, so I gave him a little leeway, right?
Oh, did you? Thank you.
Yes. But 8 minutes is what it is. I have a stop clock, and I just want to say that there's a marital status in the United States of religious groups, and it ranks, the highest religion is the Mormons that marry, 66%. The end and in between is many of our religions. So it goes down to 32%. So I just want to throw some of those percentages out there at you. We're going to ask Reverend Rodney to come. Thank you.
All right, well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So my name is Reverend Rodney Gasaway, and I represent the United Methodist Church. And I sit as the chairperson for the Division on Christian Unity and Interreligious Relationships for the state of Michigan for the Methodist Church, and would like to start today to say I'm going to cover a little bit on marriage, but I'm going to talk more about family. And what is a family? How do we define a family? What does a family today look like compared to a family maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago? What does that mean for us today? Also, what is the positive value of men and women in the eyes of God in relationships? Is there a difference? Is there more value to someone who's married compared to someone who's not married? What does this say scripturally? So we're just going to take a look at this. It says, first of all, I want to point out that spirituality and society, God does not recognize a difference. We as humanity have created those differences. We have created the division that stands in the way of God's vision for this world and what this world has become. Many of the problems of today are not of God, but are of humanity. Now, as a church, we believe that our primary identity is of children of God. And cultural identity evolves through our history, our traditions, and our experiences. Now, the church seeks to embrace the nurture the cultural formation as it means one body, fully one body expressed in multiple ways. In other words, as a Christian religion, we believe that there are one body in Christ. And all are part. And through our relationships with and among cultures, we are called to have the responsibility for learning from each other, showing mutual respect for our differences and similarities as we experience the diversity on perspectives and viewpoints. Now, this is extremely important, especially today, as there are so many blended families. So if those families cannot learn to respect the cultures and the understandings of the other family, is that going to cause problems? The mayor just said that she left and was doing a marriage. One was a Bangladeshi girl and someone that was non-Bangladeshi, and it was taking a little bit more work, I'd take, for her to prepare that. Well, I knew mine was much different. When me and my wife got married nearly 25 years ago, I grew up in a small area of a country town down south, and my wife grew up in Detroit. Well, there's quite a bit of cultural difference in where we grew up and our understandings of how things work. But our families had to learn to get along and have mutual respect for each other and for the customs of each of our families for that to happen. We want to affirm the integrity of single persons. And I want to reject all social practices that discriminate or social attitudes that are prejudicial against persons because they are single. This also includes single parents, because we have to recognize the extra responsibilities that are included in being a single parent. We have to understand and affirm from a scriptural standpoint the common humanity of males and females, both having equal worth in the eyes of God. Now we reject the erroneous notion that one gender is superior to another, that one gender must strive against another, and that members of one gender may receive love, power, and esteem only at the expense of another. We especially need to reject the idea that God made individuals as incomplete fragments made only human or made only full when in union with another. We call upon women and men alike to share the power and control, to learn to give freely and to receive freely, and to be complete and to respect the wholeness of each other. We seek for every individual opportunity and freedom to love and to be loved, and to seek and to receive justice, and to practice ethical self-determination. And we understand the gender diversity to be a gift from God, intended to add to a rich variety of human experiences and perspectives. And we have to guard against attitudes and traditions that would use this good gift to leave members of one sex more vulnerable in relationships than one another, than others. The family is to be the basic human community through which persons are nurtured and sustained in mutual love, in responsibility, respect, and in fidelity. We affirm the importance of loving parents for all children. And we also have to understand the family as encompassing a wider range of options than just the two parents and children that are the traditions that we have dealt with in the past. More and more families are single family or single parent led. Doesn't mean it's right, but it means it is a reality. We as the church need to be that nurturing voice. We need to be an educational piece. We need to be that stability in the life and that the legs of the chair in which they can lean against. We as the people of God need to stand up and affirm these individuals and affirm their children that they are loved no less because they have one parent.
Yes, that's right.
Now, children are a gift from God,
Yes,
and they need to be welcomed and received.
that's right.
And we recognize that some circumstances of birth make the rearing of children difficult. And I want to affirm and support the birth parents whose choice is to allow the child to be adopted, because I do not affirm the other option. We recognize the agony, the strength, and the courage of the birth parent and what it takes in hope, love, and prayer to offer this child for adoption, because they want this child to have something more than they know they can give. I myself was adopted, as well as both my brother and sister. I went through the process of the foster care system. And as hard as that is, when you know that a family wants you and loves you, there is no greater feeling for a child. To know that they are loved and they are wanted. We need to affirm this. We need to support those families that wish to legally adopt and raise a child as their own biological child. We need to affirm these people. And when appropriate and possible, we need to encourage open adoption, that a child may know all information and people related to them, both medically and relationally. We support and encourage greater awareness and education to promote adoption and for a wider variety of children through foster care and international adoption, domestic adoption, and we commend the both parent and the parents who are adopting, so that that child may grow to be loved in the church. That grief might be shared and joy might be celebrated, and that child might be nurtured in the community of Christian love. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for this opportunity to share today. It is not about many of the social issues that we discuss. A loving family, whatever that loving family may look like, is a loving family. Especially when children are involved, because they need to be held up high. Because they are a blessing of God. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. What a wonderful presentation. After I finish, I have a few things. I'd like to have Sister Nancy come, and then a representative from Pastor Cosmo's church. You can come right after Sister Nancy, and then that way I don't have to keep coming up. What I wanted to say is that I have some stats. The marital status of United States religious groups. And United Methodist Church, 61% of their members are married. That's pretty high. And we go down the list. We have several, the Jehovah's Witnesses, 53%. The Church of God in Christ, 42%. The Muslim, 41%. Buddhist, 39%. The National Baptist Convention, 35%. This time we're going to ask Sister Nancy to come.
And there are some who are not married in our church, and I am one of those. As I prepared my remarks for tonight, I did talk about marriage in the Catholic Church. And in the Catholic Church, significant moments in life have been ritualized into what we call the 7 sacraments. Maybe I should put my glasses on and then I can keep to the 8 minutes. When a baby is born into the faith, we have the sacrament of baptism. When we remember the Lord's Supper, we have the sacrament of the Eucharist, or the Mass. When we ask forgiveness for our sins and mistakes, we have the sacrament of penance. When we note maturing in the faith of a boy or a girl, we have the sacrament of confirmation. Ordaining priests is the sacrament of holy orders, and comfort and healing for the sick and the dying is called the anointing of the sick. And marriage is a sacrament of matrimony. However, today's understanding of marriage developed for the first 8 or 9 centuries after Christ, because during those first 8 or 9 centuries, marriage was a civil contract. And it wasn't until after that time that theologians began to interpret the spiritual significance in marriage, and eventually the Catholic Church made marriage a sacrament. It essentially abolished divorce and also instituted a complex system of prohibitions and rules regarding marriages. And as I proceed, you will see some of them we manage today. The church defines marriage as an intimate union in which a man and a woman give themselves as equal persons, completely and lovingly to one another. By their mutual gift of self, they cooperate with God in bringing children to life, in caring for them and educating them. But marriage is more than a civil contract. It is a sacred contract, a covenant between a man and a woman, established by God as the natural means for procreation of the human race, of giving mutual help and loving relationship for each other, and to promote material and spiritual well-being for each other and their families. In the eyes of the church, marriage is the basic institution of human society, as Pastor before me has said. The covenant relationship is akin to the covenant between God and his chosen people as described in the Old Testament. Today, many people say, Father so-and-so married us. But actually, marriage is conferred by the man and woman on each other. They give the sacraments. And the church authority blesses, that partnership. The couple pronounce marriage vows affirming their love and fidelity to each other for life. Early Christians followed customs of their city or country and made serious efforts to Christianize these rituals. Marriage is also used to describe the relationship between Jesus Christ and his church. For instance, in one scripture reading in Ephesians, it is said, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two become one flesh." Marriage between two baptized Catholics is celebrated during a Mass. But as we know, it's not only Catholics that are attracted to Catholics. Mixed marriages between a baptized Catholic and a baptized Christian and a non-baptized person must receive a dispensation from the local bishop to be married in the church, and that ceremony is performed during a prayer service in the church. The church allows such marriages as an effort to recognize the current reality of our pluralistic society. However, the Catholic party is to declare that he or she is ready to continue to practice their faith and make a sincere promise to have the children baptized and brought up in the faith. And some of you might have experienced this either as clergy or as persons who have, either friends or family or yourself, who have attempted to marry a Catholic person. And our period of preparation for a couple who is getting married is 6 months before the ceremony. The marriage ceremony is traditionally followed by a celebration according to the cultural customs of the husband and wife and their families of origin. For instance, in the Polish tradition, a dinner is followed by dancing to music provided by a band or DJ, and special focus is put on the dance between a son and his mother and the father and the bride, father of the bride. Toward the end of the reception, the guests form a circle around the bride and groom, and the groom, to the accompaniment of wild music, removes a garter from his wife's leg. And the bride tosses her bouquet to the single women in attendance. Some of these customs continue to today, but some of them have been, shall I say, discarded by the younger people. And another custom that sometimes is followed in the Polish tradition is the Grand March, where the bride and groom lead the entire group who is celebrating with them into a march around the hall, and it's a great time of merriment and involving children, adults, and so forth. So it's something that they remember for a long time. And a number of family customs that are practiced stem from both the traditions in the Catholic faith, but also in the culture of both the husband and the wife that form the family. And so just a couple of them are, the blessing of the house on the Feast of the Epiphany, the Three Kings, a May procession, the crowning of Our Lady during May, and especially among the Hispanic society or Mexican people, the Altar of the Dead on All Souls Day, November 2nd. So as some of these customs are continued among the generations, it is celebrating not only the family, but also the ritual of marriage that joins the man and woman in bringing their families together and their customs together. So if anybody has any questions, please, as Imam Arif said, please mail them to him, and I certainly will be happy to answer them too.
Thank you, Sister Nancy. Thank you.
Pastor David couldn't be here, so he asked me to show up. And I didn't prepare anything, but I did give this some thought. So I think most of the people in the dais understand, know about Reverend Moon and his church, the Unification Church as it's called, although the official title is the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. And the mass weddings we've had. And people wonder, what's that all about, right? What's this mass wedding all about? So, over the years, marriage has sort of gone through transformations within the Unification Church. Originally, it was very restrictive. And it was, because what we do is, we call it the blessing. Now let me back up what that's all about. We go back and say that when God created Adam and Eve, he gave them 3 blessings. He said, be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion. And our interpretation of the term fruitful means to grow to individual spiritual perfection. Then upon achieving spiritual perfection, they were supposed to come together as man and woman to form a family. And then after they had formed a family and had children, they should take loving dominion over the God's creation. That the creation is a gift from God to humanity. And if that had happened, if the first man and woman had done that, followed the plan, then we'd be living in the kingdom of heaven on earth. Now that's the original idea. So the question is that, as Reverend Moon said, did you think God gave up his original idea? No. So the question is, how do we get back to this original idea? And this is where the concept of the blessing comes in. We say that the blessing is a process by which the act that Adam and Eve committed is forgiven, and people can therefore start to grow beyond the level of spiritual development we've had thus far, and have children who don't have the taint of Adam and Eve's sin upon them. Now, that's saying a lot. So if anybody wants to throw apples or rock fruit at me, that's fine. I don't care. I can take it. So because of that, in the beginning, he had a very restrictive thing. The idea of the family in the unification thought process is that the family is the cornerstone of God's kingdom on earth. You cannot have a peaceful world unless you have peaceful families. I think in the Jewish tradition they call it Shalom Bayit. Is that correct?
Shalom Bayit.
Shalom Bayit.
Bayit.
Yes, Bayit. He's going to correct my Hebrew. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So what it means, in that, the very concept of a peaceful family starts in Judaism. It's a very old concept. And Reverend Moon is just revitalizing this concept and taking it to a new level. He said, no, we need to not just have peaceful families, we have to have ideal families. And if we have peaceful, ideal families, then we'll have a peaceful, ideal world. So, that's the first thing about the family, is the family is the cornerstone for the peaceful, ideal world. Now that means, how many families do you need to develop a peaceful, ideal world? How many of these families you need? Anybody got an idea? Everyone. Everyone. Okay, so then the question is, then the next thing about what we do is, I'm pretty sure many of you heard terms about this matching process that Reverend Moon used to do, where he would go in and just pick people and they'd come together, and church members would come together, and he'd match them, engage them. Now in that process, that was like you going and saying, okay, Reverend Moon, I'll let you pick my potential spouse. And this is a very important decision. I'm going to tell you why. Because in our understanding, marriage is not just from death to you part. Marriage is forever. So the person you marry to today in this world, you're going to be married to in the next world. So it's a very important decision. So you don't want to make a mistake, because you have to live with it forever. literally. So a lot of times, people would say, oh, I can't handle this. This person, I cannot go through this with this person. And they wouldn't accept his recommendation. So that's how it started out. But since then, as I was saying, it's kind of gone through transformations. Because originally it was only Unification Church members. Now anybody can join in a blessing. It doesn't matter what your religion, or even if you have a religion. Because God doesn't belong to any religion. So this concept of blessing doesn't belong to just us. It's a concept that God gave to us, to every moon and his wife, but it's supposed to be shared with everyone freely. So now we have, in our organization, we have matching convocations where parents get together and try and find a spouse for their children. This is an ancient process, right? Right? Many countries have done this throughout history, right? Very old process. And it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to tell you why. Because when a young man and a young woman are looking at each other, what are they looking for? External things. But when a parent is looking at a prospective spouse for their child, what are they looking at? Internal things. So it's very good to have the parents involved in this process of picking a spouse. Okay? Because that helps make sure that the two are compatible. Now, Reverend Moon used to do something very interesting. He would match people together who came, in church. These are all church members back in those days. And he would put people together who actually were from different races or different ethnic backgrounds or different nations, particularly nations that fought each other. So if you go to one of our services and looked at the body of the congregation, you'd see a lot of couples who are there's an American and a Japanese. And didn't they just fight a war a few years ago? Or they would be a Korean and a Japanese, and they really can't stand each other. He would mix people black and white. He always did that because he said the best way to bring world peace is to have people intermarry. Because of that way, you can't say to somebody, hey, I can't accept that because that person's from a different race, but that's your grandchild. You can't reject your grandchild. The lady standing up, so I'm out of time. Yeah. So if you have any questions, and if you want to participate in the blessing, you are welcome to participate. You don't have to convert. Thank you.
Well, let's give these presenters a hand. Wonderful. Before we have our cantor, David, and then Reverend Darla, and then the rabbi, I'd like to tell you that interfaith marriage is common in the United States. It's increasing. Just like the mayor said, it's increasing more and more throughout the years. It's about 15% now, and that's pretty high. So I just want to give you those stats. And then I want you to know that marrying within the faith is still common in the United States, with nearly 7 in 10 married people, which represents 69%, saying that their spouse shares their religion. So we'll have
David Anderson.
Cantor. David next. Yeah, Cantor David.
Hi, friends. Hello. Let me take just a second here to set up my video here. I'm not going to video you, but I want to know later on what I said. So, I'm David Henderson. I'm not a clergy. I'm a retired elementary school teacher. So if I talk too simply to you, just give me a kick and up it a little bit with language. Family life in the Baha'i faith is extremely important. And the principles that we have heard from each of the faiths preceding are if it's a sound principle, it's going to be identical in every faith. Baha'is believe in the unity of science and religion. Even in psychology, they're studying the principles of how to create relationship. And so, everything that I say, I have to precurse it by saying this is all my own opinion. I do have a few notes that I created, far more than we can possibly share. But the really important thing that I need to start out with is that each one of us has to develop a relationship with our Creator. And we have a soul, we have a spiritual nature. Now, even for the atheist, I don't care they call themselves an atheist. We're all dealing with the same reality out there, and we're all trying to put words to what we're experiencing. So, may the force be with you. It's okay to say it that way as far as I'm concerned. In fact, Dr. Stephen Phelps, who's a cosmologist of physics, he's got his doctorate from, in the studying of astrophysics. He says that in the Baha'i writings, from what he has read of the nature of God, and as he understands the scientific reality, that they are so closely related that in some ways they're even more closely related to the way atheists describe reality than they are to the way that we traditionally have understood the concept of God. So that's a little bit far astray from talking about family, but in a sense it's not, because parents are charged with the education of their children. Children need to be brought up in a loving, warm environment where the parents are joined and united together in this holy, sacred institution of marriage. And then the parents need to be able to communicate with one another with sound principles of communication. In the Baha'i faith, we have a process called consultation. And in consultation, you express your opinions freely and frankly and lovingly, dispassionately, and try to create agreements of what your plans are for action. Put those plans of action into work, and then evaluate whether or not things are working out, and if they're not, come back at it again. All based within a prayerful, meditational environment, reading Holy Scriptures for guidance. And so, I mean, I have quotations about all this stuff that I'm talking about, but in a sense, going back to the fundamental spiritual qualities that you invite to surround your family and to give you an environment. The family is the bedrock of society.
Yes.
It's in the Baha'i writings as well. That the family, if you expand the circle of the family, you come to the community, expand the community, you come to the nation, expand the nation, you come to the international, global environment. We are all one family. One of the bedrock teachings of the Baha'i faith is that we are one human family, and that it is time for us to look at what we've inherited from the past and to evaluate what will carry humanity forward in an ever-advancing civilization and what is holding us back from creating a loving and tremendous society for all of our families and our children. One of Baha'u'llah's teachings, Baha'u'llah is the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, one of his teachings is, the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. And I'm sure that you've heard, God didn't draw the lines on the map. People drew those lines on the map. That's one of the things we need to take a look at. Now, Baha'i faith does not say get rid of nations, but but it does say that it's time for our nations to come together into a world commonwealth and to identify a secondary language that we could teach all of our children, so our children could go anywhere on the planet and talk to anybody they want to with that secondary language. Instead of everybody trying to learn like 16 languages, and in my case I only speak English because I didn't get to it and I need to work on that some more. You know, Baha'u'llah said regard humans, children, regard mankind, regard children as a mine rich with gems of inestimable value. So we need to educate our children, open up their hearts, remove the prejudices, the racism, the classism, the misunderstandings that occur between religions, because God didn't send the religions to divide humanity. He sent the religions to educate humanity and to upraise civilizations. And every single religion that is represented here and those that are not represented here had their day where there was a wonderful flourishing efflorescence of magnificent civilization. Now, from the Baha'i perspective, we do understand that sometimes people start to let a bit of ego get into the religion and let a little bit of power and the relationship between the secular government authorities sometimes start to get in there and create problems. And so Baha'is believe that God progressively brings new lessons to humanity to bring us together. And I see that we have a purple phantom back here. My closing thought is my children grew up with this on their refrigerator door. My home is the home of peace. My home is the home of joy and delight. My home is the home of laughter and exultation. Whoever enters through the portals of this home must go out with a gladsome heart. This is the home of light. Whosoever enters here must become illumined. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I need to. I didn't say we had five. I said right. Come on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am going to take my presentation in a little different direction. I need to first start off by reading scripture, because I think the black family has been so misunderstood all these years. We hear things, the angry black woman, the uncaring black man, the wild children, and there's a reason for all of this. And I'm going to do my best to keep it in an 8-minute segment.
7:28.
But I needed to let you know that it's basically biblical. And the scriptures that I'm going to read is from Numbers chapter 30, and it's verse 2 and 3. And it reads, "If a man vows a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth." Verse 3 reads, "If a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord, and bind herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth." So now I believe most of us sitting here know that the black family was very spiritually based, coming from our homeland. That's what we had. when we came into America and we were given the white man's religion, we took that and accepted that, and we lived by the word of God that was presented to us, what I just read. Now, back during the 30s, I have the research, but I'm not going to try and quote it because she's going to stand up. Back during the 30s, we can go back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. The black families were intact. Our families lived, maybe not like I've heard many say tonight as the American nucleus family, but we lived in the manner in which we were accustomed to. You may have a husband and a wife and a grandma and a grandpa, an uncle and an aunt and a niece and a cousin. And we may have, many of us slept in the same room in the same bed. And we were fine. We were fine. We were thriving. We were making it. Our children did not come home to empty homes. There was no such thing as latchkey. Anybody agree with me?
Amen.
Then in 1960, when the powers that be seen how courageous, how strong, and how spiritual the black family was, they say, we got to do something about this. We got to break this family down. We've got to break the structure of the black family. In 1960, the government developed a program called A Man in the House.
Yeah.
That's when they coined the word dysfunction.
That's right.
Because it didn't appear to be what the white man had or other races had. So our family had to be dysfunctional. Because my grandma and granddad slept upstairs while my parents slept downstairs, and all the kids was in one bed in one room, clean, not hungry, well taken care of, very respectable. Government couldn't stand that, the powers that be. So now, as any young girl at 16 that becomes pregnant, like you said tonight, what did they say? What did they tell her? If you leave your home, because your home is what? Dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Too many people living in the home. We will give you a welfare check. We'll give you, what did they call it back in the day? Food stamps. They didn't have a bridge card.
Amen.
And we'll give you insurance for you and your baby.
Amen.
We'll even help you find a roach, rat-infected, drug-induced environment to live in.
Ooh-wee.
Am I speaking truth?
Yeah.
Okay?
Speaking to
So, so I'm upset with you. You my mama, and you're my grandma. You're steady trying to tell me stay in school. We'll help you with the baby. Do this. I don't want to hear that. I done got a boyfriend, and now I done had a baby. I am grown.
Yeah.
The government comes along and supports this child's immature behavior.
Yes.
If she was a black girl, they sent her down in inner city Detroit, where we all know what that was like back in the 60s. So now she got a boyfriend.
Right.
He's in school, he's playing sports, and he's doing good. We all have made mistakes. That does not make us the worst people in the world.
Amen.
And in our culture, we are the most forgiving, accepting race of people known to mankind.
Absolutely.
So now, he got a girlfriend with a baby, and she got someplace to live. So he goes home, and his father says, well, young man, it's 10 o'clock. The street lights are on. Where you been? I ain't got to take this. Because in his mind, he has somewhere else to go.
Yeah.
No job and school. But the welfare has set this in motion to break down the black family.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wind it up, but it's going to take a few minutes.
Wow. You
So,
got one.
what does he do? I ain't got to listen to you no more. I got some place to go. So the dad is brokenhearted. The mother is crying. What's wrong with that child?
Yes.
He moves in with who?
Yes.
Unwed mother,
Yeah.
his girlfriend. They don't know what they doing. Don't even know their name good. That's what our grandparents used to tell us. What you mean your back hurt? You don't even know what your name is good. So now we got a major problem. Baby needs diapers. That little $50 check is gone. Those food stamps, they've eaten them up. But it's a grown man on the corner, many times a white man. But they won't tell you truth. They won't tell you truth. So he tells me, hey, I can show you a way to make some money.
Yeah.
He don't have any education. He done lost his scholarship. So what is he going to do but begin to sell drugs? Then he gets so far out there, his parents don't want to take him back. The girl can't go back. Because now she's really feeling her oats, so to say. She's totally grown. They still were getting married because this is what we were raised to do. That old spirituality that is in us as a people is still present. They get married. Then in the 60s comes this law. So now, the only guy she's ever really been with has got to leave in order for the baby to get formula. In order for the baby number 3 to get diapers. Because by now, only God knows how many children this young girl has had. So he leaves. But in his heart, he feels as though he not only violated his wife, but the vows he made to God. So he becomes an angry black man. Here she's left, no education, struggling, 3, 4 babies. Wouldn't you be angry too? So now we have an angry young black woman trying to raise her children on her own. And she's remembering, but we took these vows to one another. We made an oath unto God, and he left me. He must not care about me. Sure, he'll come around every now and then, but if he can't take the children out to Big Boy or wherever, he's feeling less than a man. So he begins to come around less and less and less and less. In the meantime, he's out in the street hustling. They ain't gonna let no black man hustle too long without locking them up. I don't care what the hustle is.
Yeah.
So what happens? He's locked up. She's still trying to raise these children. Sometimes they survive. Sometimes they didn't. But we need to understand why so many of our youth act the way they do. They were raised by angry black women. Not because they were black women, but because of how society cheated them out of their lives. They don't even know what they're angry about anymore. They just know they don't feel good. Every morning they wake up to the same thing.
Yes.
How are they supposed to feel? How can I raise a child when I left home from my mom, my grandma, my aunts, my uncles, and went out here in this world on my own, and the world is not friendly to any of us? It's the reason, and we need to examine it. I think you said it. I've listened extremely hard to what everyone said. We've got to get our children back.
Yes.
But we've also got to embrace their parents. They're coming out of prison. I work here in the Hamtramck school system. You cannot say father, daddy to these young black boys. they begin to cry, they begin to weep, they begin to break down. Some of them, they know where their fathers are. They're serving life prison systems. In the prison system, they're serving lifetime. They don't even go see them anymore. How do you want them to act? Please, don't think for 1 minute I'm making any excuses. I came from a 2-parent family. My very, I don't like the word religious, but very spiritually involved family. But I even interviewed young girls that came that way. The parents, how hurt they were. They had goals. Most fathers that worked at Ford Foundry, up here in Holbrook, over there, Dodge, Maine, over there, at the other plants, they didn't want that for their boys and girls. They wanted a better life for them. But they didn't even get that far. So in my closing, I say pray.
Yeah, amen.
I say, ask the Lord, what can I do, Lord, as thy humble servant, to save, feed, and help one of your lost?
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
We got to understand from where they came from. Wasn't their
Could you
fault.
please tell us your name?
Huh?
We can't read your name on here. Could you please tell us your name?
Reverend Darla Swint. I'm from
S-W-I-N-T?
This is from my scripture.
Okay. S-W-I-N-T. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Very good.
We got to understand, the Genesis tells us, I know I'm finished, but first chapter of Genesis says, and God said it, not me, nobody in here, but God, he says, the peoples is one. How do we get back to that and not understand the journey that each one of us have walked
Amen.
and respect it?
Good job.
Good job. Thank you so much.
Reverend.
We take this away.
Well, that was very powerful and moving and really an example of how sometimes, despite our spiritual basis, that government and other forces can come in and just wreak havoc. And we need to be aware of that, and we need to know that we yet have the power to overcome those forces if we work together. And we can learn from each other and support each other every way possible. Before becoming a rabbi, I was a family and crisis counselor in Detroit, and I saw firsthand some of the things that you talk about, and I grew up in Detroit, so I know. Okay. So in Judaism, well, I have to say that much of what has already been said, I'll make my presentation a lot shorter because guess what? A lot of it is very much the same. The importance of marriage and family in Judaism comes from very much from the idea of shalom bayit, as Anthony said, the peace in the family, which is the second highest value in Judaism, next to saving a life, which is the top value. And it is because in the family is really the laboratory or the framework from which all our values are passed on to our children, and how we relate to each other in the family is really how we learn to relate to each other in the world. So definitely, peace in the family is so related to peace in the world. It starts there. And definitely, if we think about the cases that Reverend Darla has pointed out to us, we can see that very vividly. The other thing is that in every marriage, we say there are three partners. There is a husband, a wife, and God. Getting married is in Hebrew called kiddushin, sanctification, because it is sanctification of life. And it is taken very seriously. Of course, today there are marriages that are performed both between a husband and wife and between same-sex couples in Judaism. And there are interfaith marriages. As a rabbi, have performed several of them, but in general, I try to honor both religious traditions. I did recently a Hindu-Jewish tradition, because we hope that something is happening in our world altogether, bringing us together. And for many years, I wouldn't do interfaith marriages, but I think that seeing that there are people in our congregations who are of interfaith background, why would I stop them at marriage? They're going to get married anyway. Why not be able to bless them and try to bring some of the Jewish tradition into that family too, if they so want that? The wedding ceremony itself in Judaism, it involves, I'm just going to briefly describe that. It starts originally with the writing of a marriage contract called a ketubah. And this was originally a woman's insurance policy that the man promised to provide her housing, food, clothing, and conjugal rights. And in the old days, if you didn't have that in writing, you'd be let go into the wilderness. And so it was really important. It also is an important document to have in case a marriage does break down. And in Judaism, we do say divorce is not something to be looked down upon. It might happen. It might not work out. Both a woman and a man could initiate divorce proceedings. However, it's not something that's recommended. We try very much to help counsel a couple to try to keep them going. The second part of the ceremony is to make it sanctified, and make it joyous, we always drink wine called kiddush, and we do it twice in the wedding ceremony. The second time we do it, we accompany the blessing with 7 blessings, which I wonder if that's where they got the 7 sacraments from originally. Who knows? And there are 7 various blessings that are said to the bride and groom, including the last one, which is really about how a marriage is also a blessing for everyone present, so that joy should be spread to the community. And it is a taste of the world to come, of the paradise, of the future life when there will be peace on earth. A ring exchange was something that originally done to show that the groom was giving something of value to the bride. Today, both groom and bride give something of value to each other. Oh, and the ketubah today, by the way, is usually a written document which expresses the vision of the couple for their marriage, and they make it very artistic and usually hang it up in their house afterwards. There are various blessings and readings from the Bible that are presented at the wedding. The most important thing is that there is witnessing going on, witnessing by all those present, and usually the family stands on both sides of the bride and groom. So the parents, grandparents, friends are all very much a part of the wedding. And finally, the wedding ends with the breaking of the glass. The groom stamps on that, or sometimes both the bride and the groom nowadays. And that is to represent a couple things. Number one, the preciousness of a relationship, how we must really treasure that, and the many pieces that go into that relationship. And secondly, reminding us of the destruction of the holy temples in Jerusalem, and our prayers that someday they will be rebuilt and there will be peace on earth. And finally, this is more of there are superstitions in Judaism. There were this belief that there might be evil spirits around. So if you made a noise, you'd scare the evil spirits away. Family life in Judaism is extremely important. The family is called the Mikdash Ma'at. You know, I can do without this, right? Yeah. There we go. So it's not buzzing. The small temple, okay? There are rituals throughout the life cycle, which begins with the baby naming, or for a boy, it's the circumcision at 8 days after birth. And there we have the example of the extended family, because what you would call the godfather, a very good friend of the family, is to hold the child on the lap as the ritual is performed. And that person then takes on the responsibility of helping to raise that child, being in that child's life throughout the times of their life. Certainly, the home was the place where all the holidays are celebrated. The children are blessed on the eve of the Sabbath. The life cycle events take place also in a family setting. Besides the circumcision at age 13, there is bar mitzvah, affirmation, or bat mitzvah if it's a girl, affirmation of them taking on the roles of what the responsibilities of a Jewish adult, wedding, of course, and death. There are many laws which regulate how to relate to your family members. Perhaps the most important principle is respect. To the extent that if you see your parent throw your inheritance in the river, you are not supposed to get mad at them, curse them, or anything like that. So even though you might think they're senile, but that means you still have to treat them with utmost respect. Today, there are many, many ways of supporting the family in the Jewish community. There are things such as family camp, programs for single parents and for widows and widowers, family education programs, Jewish parenting classes, interfaith family programs, and probably the most outstanding thing here in the Detroit area is there is an organization called the Jewish Family Service, which provides all kinds of services for Jewish and non-Jewish families. It's located in West Bloomfield, but it is open to everybody. So I'd like to end with a little joke, a little story about relating, showing how families relate. Of course, you've all heard of Jewish mothers and what they have become. So this girl calls up her mother-in-law, and she says, "And Mama, you won't believe what's happened. The sink is leaking, the refrigerator stopped working, the baby is crying. I have a Hadassah meeting," that's a Jewish organization, "of women coming over in 2 hours. Can you please help me? What am I going to do?" The mother says, "Honey, don't worry." This is in New York. "I will take the bus to Grand Central. I will take the train out to you. I will walk 10 blocks to your house. I will come. I will take care of the baby. I will help you prepare the lunch for the ladies. I'll call the plumber, and I'll even fix a great dinner for Barry." Girl says, "Barry? Who's Barry?" Says, "Your husband, of course, my son." "But his name is Steve, Mama." "It is?" The girl says, "Is this 586-3592? No, this is 586-9238. Oh, does that mean you're not coming?
Oh, let's give all of the presenters a hand, another hand. Let's give them a round of applause. Yes. Wonderful, wonderful. I just want to give you a few more stats. For all of the religions, 2.3 million couples wed every year in the United States. And it breaks down to nearly 6,200 weddings a day. The average ages of brides and grooms range from 25 to 26. And the average number of guests invited to a wedding is 178. 1/3 of those getting married each year have been married before. Now, the money behind marriage is $72 billion per year is spent on weddings. The average wedding budget is $20,000. $1,016 is the average cost of wedding rings for the bride and the groom. And traditionally, you know, the father of the bride, he would pay for everything. But today, the bride and the groom themselves pay for the wedding about 30% of the time. The bride's parents pay about 17% of the time. And as for the rest of the time, costs are covered by different sources. The bride and groom and one or both sets of parents according to surveys. This is where that information is coming. And then guess what? $19 billion per year is spent on wedding gift registries. $8 billion per year is spent on honeymoons. The average honeymoon budget is $3,657. And over 91% of all to-be weds register for gifts now. And most wedding guests spend between $70 to $100 on a gift. And there's no telling how much money the bridal party spends on their dresses and shoes and what they purchase. The best time, or the most popular time for a wedding, of course, is June. And the weddings, where do weddings take place? 80% of all weddings are performed in churches and synagogues. 99% of newlyweds take a honeymoon. And the average couple will spend 3 times more on their honeymoon than they will spend on a regular vacation. 40% of honeymooners will travel within the United States, and about 60% will travel to a foreign country. Honeymoons usually last 7 to 9 days, and the most popular destination for a wedding, you guessed it, Las Vegas. I'm not sure if they're going there to the church, because I know they have wedding chapels there. The second most popular place is Hawaii. Third is the Caribbean and Jamaica. And the top wedding city in the world is Istanbul, Turkey. Yeah, Istanbul, Turkey, with 166,000 for the year. And then the second place is Las Vegas. So these are some of the things that I just wanted to add. Realizing that God created the marriage covenant. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Arif for closing remarks. Oh, thank you for allowing me to be your moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Yvette, for moderating this program. You did a wonderful job. And I thank all the presenters. Thank you very much for a wonderful job. This is what we dealing daily with, but we don't feel it because we are overwhelmed with many other things and forgot our priorities the most. Priorities is family. friendship is part of the family. Now from here we go to honey home. And somebody will go to honeymoon. We have to see, is that really moon up there tonight? Those presenters are most of them members of Commonwealth Alliance, or all of them actually, all of them. And they are my mentors since I met them. But in my study of comparative religions, they really were my mentors. I had interview with every one of them. So through video interview, I learned a lot. I had 20 same questions for each of them. They all accommodate me with that interview and many others, clergies from various faiths in Southeastern Mission. I really thank you, and I cannot be not to thank Dean of the University, Reverend Kathleen Regan, and her executive director, who really helped me with their educators that I learned, and I got my minister's degree with this Faith Seminary International in New York. Thank you and God bless you. Thank you, Greg, for videotaping this event. I really appreciate your wife, Tamara, Director of Library, and her staff to allow us to utilize this facility. I appreciate all you accommodate us, and I appreciate Mayor Majewski that she attended, and that Hamtramck Public School Superintendent Jalila Ahmed had her representative, Sister Laquita, and we have her from Detroit's east side, Chenika, our new friend with Commonwealth Alliance and with Hamtramck as a community activist from east side. Thank you for coming. And I'd like to ask you all for your testimonies on this program to email us on my email, which is general email for both organizations, arifhuskic@gmail.com, ariflhuskic@gmail.com, and phone number 313-999-5483. I really appreciate you all, and thank you for being tonight at this program. Give yourself applause around, please. I would like to ask Reverend Rodney Gustavy, Vice President of the organization, as well as his Pastor Yvette, also Vice President of the organization's Commonwealth Alliance, and I thank Reverend David Kesbo for having his representative Anthony Palmer to be to giving presentation from Father Moon movement. I really appreciate that movement, and I am a great supporter to it. So I like to ask you all to support each other, regardless what faith we belong all to one God. So this is also, I like to mention people who wasn't able for some reason to attend this event. That is Imam Ilahi from Dearborn Heights. He had to fly tonight somewhere downtown, out of town emergency, and that's why he's not able to be here with us. Sheikh Dr. Ali Suleiman Ali from Cantor Mosque, he wasn't able because somehow he tripled his calendar at the same time, and he had to be in his mosque in Canton for something that's going on over there. Imam Abdul Latif Azam, last night he arrived from Hajj from Mecca, and he has a problem with his back. He said he's pulled muscle, somewhere pulling luggage. So may God forgive them, and may God heal them, may God heal us all, may God protect us. And I would like to ask Reverend Rodney Gustavy to close this program with prayer.
Amen.
Let's pray. Lord God, thank you for this opportunity to come together today, to learn from each other, to hear how you are present in the lives of so many, in the ways of family, in the ways of marriage, in the ways of raising children. Thank you for this blessing. Thank you for the blessing of marriage. Thank you for the blessing of men and women. Thank you for the blessing of your creation. Thank you for children. We thank you for all of these things. We thank you for your grace and mercy that extend in all of our lives in so many ways. We want to thank all who came here tonight. Let their words be a blessing to others, and their hearts and minds be open as we all continue to learn and grow in your grace and mercy. We thank you for all of these things in the name of our God and Savior. Amen.
Amen.
And I hope you can take a joke.